Welcome to Consulting Redefined, where we explore the rapid growth in demand for independent consultants. I'm your host today, Sandra, and today we'll be diving into the world of independent consulting and discussing the significant value that they can add to your organization. And we have a fantastic panel for you today. We have Niki Sterling, who's an expert in go-to-market and execution, Jennifer Alexander, who specializes in e-commerce and digital marketing. Then we have Chintan Lakhani, who's an expert in program management for digital transformation and customer experience. And finally, we have Anurag Bhalla from Outsized, a platform connecting businesses with top independent talent. So before we dive in, I'd love to hear from each and every one of you what drew you to independent consulting. And Jenny, let's start with you, maybe.
Hi, I was really driven by the rapid pace of change in digital commerce and hearing so many companies really talk about that, and not be able to necessarily execute on it. As an independent consultant, what I really wanted to do was bring that pace, bring that change, bring that knowledge to those clients that directly wanted to be impacted by it, really helping them embrace that pace of change and embrace digital transformation. And so as I think about the journey that I've been on as an independent consultant, where my expertise has really taken me is to be able to train those clients and work with them while I'm on a project, but also help them learn so that after a project, they can continue on in this pace of rapid digital change.
Mm-hmm.
Niki, what about you?
Yeah, it's a really good point you bring up about execution, Jenny, because this is one of the things that I've always seen. A while ago now, I came across a really interesting insight that actually only 67% of business strategies fail, and only 10% are actually successfully executed. And when I kind of reflected on this with the different businesses I've worked across, one thing became really apparent that the businesses know what they need to do, but they don't actually know how to do it. So how to actually execute it. And I kind of thought, well, if I harnessed my expertise and worked with those businesses that don't have the resources that the large multinationals do, I could really make a difference. I could help them to optimize and execute their strategies with simple and practical and action-focused plans that are really easy for them to work with. And just as importantly, I really wanted to be able to get to something that wasn't a lengthy, onerous process. So it could be done in a really quick time and be easy to embed in the business. So continue to ensure their long-term success.
Shintan, what about you?
Yeah, so I can add here. See, my journey has always been about diving deep into complex challenges across various industries, be it digital transformation, customer experience, or any other. And I wanted the freedom to not just advise, but to actually roll up my sleeves and drive execution. In my experience, I'll tell you, what I've seen is many organizations come up with these lofty goals and initiatives only for them to be sidelined at the first sight of a business as usual challenge or sensing initial resistance to change. So this is where I see adding most value, like translating that vision, that lofty goal into a program with well-defined projects or tasks and seeing them through to completion, which means remaining agile, making adjustments as we go, still keeping on course to deliver the expected outcomes. And it'd be interesting to also know what Anurag has seen across the board with Outsized.
Yeah, thanks, Chintan. I mean, I've hired independents, I've been an independent, and now at Outsized, we've built a community of over 42,000 independents across Asia, Africa, and Middle East. And what really brought me to the sector was my own experiences of trying to execute complex works in complex markets. And especially when we talk about the markets we operate in, growth markets, where really the options for executing historically were either you bring in a big global consulting firm, You know, if you're a big enterprise, either you're going to go to a big global consulting firm, or you're going to look at sort of the permanent hiring market. And having been in those shoes, we found that often neither of those options really worked. You know, on the big consulting firm side, we'd find that great when it came to thinking and strategy, but then when you got into detailed execution, often what you'd find you'd get were generalist consulting skills. You weren't getting those practitioners, those people I call the scars of execution, the scars of delivery. They've been there, they've done it. And then when it came to permanent hiring, I found it to be a completely broken market where, you know, long lead times, highly risky, highly costly, and doesn't really work for an agile delivery model. You can't wait 6 months to bring in the right capability to execute a critical piece of work. And what we saw in our markets was that this independent sector didn't really exist 10 years ago when we came to market. And we made two bets, really. The first bet was that in an unpredictable, uncertain market environment, big organizations are going to look for more agile, flexible ways to execute and build capabilities. And individuals would seek more independent careers, more control of their own destiny, would focus more on accumulating skills and knowledge over, you know, years of service. So we took a bet that the independent sector would absolutely grow, and organizations would need to leverage that sector to actually operate in a increasingly volatile market environment.
Yeah. And that's very interesting. It's really interesting to hear why and how all of you have come to independent consulting. And really what I heard was, okay, so many businesses really, you know, they know what they need to do, but they struggle with the how, right? And independent consultants really make it simple. You know, they make the strategy simple, they make it practical, and they make it doable, which is, of course, wonderful, right? Then also you guys don't really walk away from the job, right? It's not, you actually roll up your sleeves, you know, you navigate the roadblocks in the complexity, you stay agile, and you're really focused on delivering results and equipping the teams for long-term growth. And finally, you know, Anurag, really interesting what you also mentioned, you know, with Outsized, that, you know, you give and you facilitate the access to the expertise, you know. People want the right talent in the right time in the right place, and they need it fast, they need it focused, and they need it fit for purpose. So yeah, great insights already there. But you know, let's start off with, you know, setting the stage here with a really striking fact. And read that 40% of Fortune 500 companies now regularly engage independent consultants. And was wondering, Niki, you know, as our strategy expert here around the table, what do you think is driving that trend?
I think it comes back to quite a few of the points that Anurag made, actually. And for me, I think it's just a reflection of the complex world that we now live in. Yes, those businesses, you know, today they need agility, they need focus, and they need solutions that are tailored to them. And I genuinely, that's where we as independents can shine. As Anurag said, and I love the expression, you know, practitioner scars. I've actually got 30 years worth of scars across various industries, including FMCG, healthcare, MedTech. And I've worked on developing strategies, driving execution, and delivering results. And I think it's that combination of strategy and commercial experience that enables me to really understand the challenges that a business is facing quite quickly and create those practical, tailored solutions that really work for that business. And I have a very hands-on approach. And what do I mean by that? Well, I stay with the team, as you've mentioned before, and I ensure that it's really embedded in the, you know, in the business. So I lead workshops, shape business models, you know, and guide the execution. I mean, it could be anything from launching an omni-channel strategy in a hybrid B2B to B2B2C healthcare business, or designing educational platforms in the marketing organization for a MedTech business that really delivers sustainable transformation. And on that point, Chintan, you are a transformation guru. What's your perspective?
So what I've noticed of late is, you know, the key shift I've seen is how companies approach these complex initiatives. So if you remember a few years ago, you know, they would go out there, look for a perfect solution. And apparently whatever, you know, they would end up with something and they would see, this is great, let's do this, until it doesn't work. So, now they know for a fact, off-the-shelf solutions don't work. So they want partners who can work alongside their teams, bring outside in fresh perspectives and the hands-on expertise in implementing and managing these digital transformation programs. The main aspect here that I would like to highlight, what happens is, when we come in with past experience on what could go wrong. While it may be the first or the second big transformation initiative for the particular company that we're at, we've been through a few across different industries, so we largely have a good idea of what could go wrong on the tech implementation side, or people resisting certain kinds of change, or a few other things. We can of course go into the details. But basically, that's the knowledge and that we kind of bring in, and which is where independents like us shine. Again, Jenny would have another perspective, so it'll be good to kind of know what's your take on this, Jenny.
Yeah, Chintan, you and Niki really mention a lot of the key points that I've been thinking about as to why this change, and why independent consultants can really shine in an organization to help them move forward. And I mentioned it earlier about rapid change of pace within digital. And Niki, you mentioned years of experience in bringing your knowledge tool set in there. So there's a speed, there's an implementation, right? So it's more than just strategy, it's implementation. I think as well, it's around augmenting the bench strength through a team, right? There is red tape, there can be challenges, there can be disruption that might be happening within an organization, and bringing a consultant in who has done the work before, knows how to do it, can really bring a fresh perspective within a team organization. So we might be able to potentially, cut through a little bit of that red tape, or implement something as an outsider, potentially with a bit more speed, a bit more agility than an internal team who might have some shifting priorities. And might not be able to maybe make that execution work at the speed that leadership is looking for. So, having that bench strength team is great, but sort of being able to augment it with a consultant, or with a team of consultants, you can really start to see how that can flywheel an organization and move them through a disruptive phase, or move them into a phase of growth. And for me, I think that's something that I've certainly seen going into organizations and working with them. Anurag, it'd be interesting to get your perspective, what you see from the industry.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think organizations now are very much bought into, I think, the value independents bring, but there are still some constraining factors, right? So there's still some views when organizations go through to say, hey, but how do I ensure, quality and accountability? This is an individual, they've got many different clients. They're not my employee. Are they going to be as accountable? Are they going to be as bought into what I'm trying to do? Then it's around, hey, but what about my institutional knowledge? This person's going to come in, accumulate lots of knowledge, and then they're going to leave. And then that leads to continuity. Okay, but they've got more flexibility, which means that, they could leave me any moment, right? They're not mine. I can't retain them, I don't own them. And then there's a component around, are they riskier? Are they going to steal my data? What about confidentiality? And it's so interesting because you still come across these opinions, but when you really think about it, if you take those one by one, first of all, when it comes to quality, right, to be an independent, you've got to be good at what you do just to survive, right? To succeed on your own, without the strength of a big brand behind you, you need to be good at what you do. And independents really rely on referrals and recommendations, and working with a great portfolio of clients that believe in them. So you're only as good as your last project. You're not going to get paid unless you're delivering value. So you're automatically incentivized, right? And therefore you're automatically accountable. And the other thing I love, and and I'll let you guys give me a view on the other aspects of institutional knowledge and continuity. But I was speaking to someone today who's a really high-skilled independent contractor working at a big asset manager, and he said, the biggest thing that I bring to my clients is just pure honesty, like direct. I see something, I say it. I've got no, skin in the game in terms of my next role, whether this person is politically someone that I shouldn't challenge, whether that's the wrong thing to say, the right thing to say. I just see, I see what I see, I call it out, I say what needs to be done. And either they want to do it and listen, or they don't. But ultimately, I'm going to tell them what they need to do. So that freedom, that confidence to just go in and impact the organization and cut through bureaucracy is I think one of the biggest value adds. But it'd be interesting to hear if any of you've got that view. If you've had clients sort of challenge you on things like, hey, what about the knowledge that you're going to have, and what about the risk, and what about the continuity? Do you hear some of those challenges, and how do you overcome them?
I can.
Sorry, go on, Chintan.
Yeah, just a quick one here. Actually, I've had instances where clients appreciated me for my candor, which is simply calling it out to say, you know what, that's a bad move. Don't do that. Of the two alternatives that exist, the one that you're choosing will spread your resources thinner. Don't do that. Rather focus on one thing at a time and then probably proceed that way. They ended up taking that approach, and they're like, 6 months down the line, they're like, good thing. Well, there was somebody out there to stick his neck out and say, you know what, it's not working. So their seniority didn't matter. I had to say what I had to say. Yeah.
Excellent. Nikki, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I've not actually been challenged on, will I take the knowledge somewhere else? And, ultimately there's always an NDA that can be put in place if required. I found it's been more about I've come in without any preconceived ideas, and really bring fresh perspective, because what I tend to find is you go into a business and it's very successful, but you want them to go harder, faster, whatever the reason is. And they say, but we're being successful. We've always done it this way, and we're really successful. And you've got the boss tearing their hair out and saying, I know we're successful, but we need to do something different to kick the curve and make that step change. So ultimately, back to the point that Chintan just made, and yourself, it is all about having that freedom, no constraints, to really be open and transparent about what you genuinely think is going to make that business tick.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I do think one other point that's very interesting, Anurag, that you brought up, that it is around that it's a little bit of like a risk tolerance conversation, right? That these organizations are having. And what I've found is, at least with the clients that I've worked with, is the risk tolerance for them to bring me on is more about this may work, this may not work, but we don't want to take on the risk of hiring someone full time to deliver something that we're not sure strategically how in 2, 3, 5 years it's going to play out. And so in that case, really the shift is less about, an independent consultant coming in and possibly leaving. It's more about, conversation around, how can we, protect ourselves as an organization and bring someone in that is okay with potentially stepping away or moving aside at a certain point if need be, and not have it be sort of a human capital, conversation or issue for the organization. And I feel like that honestly shifts the conversation and shifts the perception a little bit when you can frame it that way and talk to someone within an organization, if they're considering hiring an independent, talk to them a little bit about that type of conversation, to say, how might you do this with a full-time employee? And if you can't do that, your best bet is to bring in an independent.
Yeah. So you all bring some really great and valuable points to the table in terms of, what's maybe driving this trend that we're obviously seeing in the market. So, and I think, to summarize that, in essence, what I heard was, okay, really, independent consultants really get the challenge, the real world challenge, and they can deliver those solutions that actually work in the real world, right? I think another one we heard was, Chintan mentioned, so the off-the-shelf cookie cutter doesn't really work anymore. Yeah. And business they need sharp, they need tailored, they need strong thinking, and something that really fits into their reality. What are we trying to address with them? I think the other one is really what I heard was, the deep expertise and the hands-on that, you bring as an independent consultant. And, usually also being a smaller team, you move faster, but you can also adjust, you can build the strategy, but you can adjust, you can fix the foundations, and, you can drive the digital change as you realize and as you go through. And I think the final thing that I heard, and both Anurag and Jenny mentioned it, is the senior expertise and having it on demand. And even if there is a risk and there is a reservation about, well, what about my organizational knowledge, institutional knowledge, where is it going to go? The advantage outweighs that of bringing somebody in with fresh perspective, and you don't have the overhead, and it's not a long-term commitment, as Jenny says. Either it works or it doesn't, So those are really some great points that you guys bring, and obviously, strong drivers for the industry. Let's go a step further, and now let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into some specific examples. And maybe Chintan, maybe you could start with, sharing a case study where you can demonstrate the impact that you can have in digital transformation and customer expertise to a client.
Sure. Okay, let me talk about this one then. So I recently managed 2 large customer experience programs for a Fortune 20 automotive company. The revamp program was to introduce several digital touchpoints in the journey, transforming how both cars are sold and serviced across 1,000 plus automotive dealerships in 6 APAC countries. Each country was at a different level of maturity in terms of adopting the program. And our central monitoring team was kind of making localizations and adjustments along the way as we kept making progress. So we had a central program, of course. We had to ensure, it stays sacrosanct, it doesn't deviate a lot. But then you also have to allow for these country level local customizations. And then, everyone is at a different stage of the journey. So, there's something broken there, but we already know what to do because, you're at step 4 somewhere else. And then, there are new challenges that we encountered there. So, still have to learn as you go to say, okay, what do we need to do to make a plan more robust? In case the other ones also come across similar difficulty once they get to that point. So all of that, is typically like the day in the life of a large program manager. But now this particular case makes it special is that we had a major roadblock. One of the key SaaS suppliers, the IT suppliers, who were supposed to give us the new software platform, which was to plug into the DMS. So, they expressed their inability to provide us the app that would run on the iPads for at least 1 more year. And when we say 1 more year, that's a big block of digital transformation missing from what we were supposed to take to all the stores. Yeah, so that meant we were in no shape to complete the rollout anytime soon. Definitely a full 1 year delay. And more than 50% of the dealerships were going to miss the deployment altogether. And that would have led to an inconsistent experience. So you go to brand showroom A and brand showroom B, and you would have totally different experiences or perceptions. That kind of beats having to do this exercise at a pan APAC level, right? So then that inconsistent experience would have led to an even worse NPS or CSI for the brand overall. So at this point, we did have to do something. What we did was we decided to pivot. We redesigned and split the program in such a manner where we would bring all the process and people aspects of the experience consistently across all of the dealerships in first year. And then we were to take the tech or the app elements of the digital transformation in year 2. What that meant was we then actually launched the program more like a 1.0, 2.0 in a manner where we were consistently improving the program. Keyword here is consistent and still incremental improvements. So yes, we're on the right track. We are making those improvements. This year, you've seen improvements on the people and process layer. next year to see improvements on the tech layer. And that's how we were able to kind of deliver those benefits. The outcome actually was great in terms of both improved NPS, better customer service index scores, and of course, like the big external benchmarking rating. I won't name the name of the agency, but we did really well on that as well. So that's something that I kind of take as a matter of pride. I'm sure Jenny must also have a few such examples. So maybe one of them, Jenny.
Yeah. Chintan, I love your transformation story there, and what it reminds me of, or one of the principles that I think of when I'm hearing that is, something I strongly believe in is that transformation can only happen with solid fundamentals as your table stakes, as what's sort of layered underneath that. And for me, what I think about, and when I think about an example, it's really about those solid fundamentals, and bringing that into a apparel organization that I was brought in to run e-commerce for. They had an e-commerce site and several retail store operations, physical locations. And when I started, when they brought me in, e-commerce was down 30% year over year, which is just, not a good place to be, and not a really normal place to be from an e-commerce perspective. And so what I did, and what we did as a team, is really worked to refocus the e-commerce operation and the way that we drove e-commerce through core fundamentals. What is the traffic coming to the site? What's the customer experience? What's the conversion rate? And then how effective is our marketing at either bringing those new customers in or bringing repeat customers back to the site? And by just simplifying it down and focusing on a couple of core KPIs, I'm really proud to say that we were able to turn the business around in about 10 months to plus 37 to the prior year. And so really, again, it goes back to that idea for me of just focusing in, simplifying it down to fundamentals. And then you can start to bring in the fancy pieces. You can bring in the extras. You can bring in the surround sound to what it is. But without those fundamentals, I truly believe the business wouldn't have been able to turn itself around. And so it's just really a focus on that that I feel quite proud to have led. Niki, I'm going to give you a chance to talk about one of your examples.
Oh, thanks, Jenny. That sounds amazing. Yeah, for me, I guess an example I'd like to talk about was with a MedTech client recently. And I'd just like to put it out there. This was a very successful client, and they were in a position whereby they needed to accelerate their growth within their must-win market. And talking about fundamentals, one of the things that I've noticed across multiple businesses, and this one had it as well, was there's a misalignment between their strategy and their key initiatives. So you have the insight, you have the strategy, you have the action plan, and you have the remuneration, and they don't ladder back up or join into each other. So you have those missing links, it's not connected. And what that leads to is a really fragmented approach. So you've got a really siloed approach now. And yes, you're all kind of moving in the same direction, but not necessarily at the same time or with the same ideas about how that should really happen. And that ultimately was, they were missing their revenue targets, and their brand was stagnating as well. And what they really needed was a cohesive go-to-market plan with the execution and the commercial policies to really support that. And then you added into that mix that they have multiple stakeholders and really diverse customer needs, and you could see why this fragmented approach was happening. So I worked with them, and we addressed these challenges head on. And we came up with a tailored program that included a connected multi-channel growth strategy and a customer lifetime value framework to really engage with those strategic partnerships. And then those defined commercial policies that would, really drive action focused JBPs, joint business plans, with their strategic partners. The process took just over 4 months. So as I said before, it doesn't need to take a long time, but there's absolute focus on this. The business really needed this. And then ultimately, following implementation, a year down the line of trading with this new program, they achieved an 8% growth against a category growth of 3%. They improved their brand share by 3 percentage points and significantly improved their return on investment by implementing their customer lifetime framework with their key strategic partners.
Wow. Wow. So some real great examples here, be it Chintan with automotive industry and, really doing a transformation and really focusing on piecemealing it to drive success. And, Jenny, yours in e-commerce and, going back to fundamentals. This really shows, and that shows your expertise, because that's overlooked. And then, Niki, yours, of course, we all know it's, strategy has to be coherent and, across all the functions in order to, drive success and drive growth. So very good example. So let's talk, Anurag, let's talk about how Outsized actually helps facilitate these kind of engagements for independent consultants.
Yeah, so look, within organizations, we're seeing a few different use cases for independence, right? The first one is bread and butter, how independents have always added value, which is, hey, I have a project, right? A complex project. I need practitioners who can come in and help me execute this project. And often that's on a individual, an individual coming in, joining my organization, delivering a scope of work. What we're seeing that evolve to is also saying, hey, I've got a project team that I need to build. Let me build a multidisciplinary team of independents, a squad of independents who can deliver a package of work. And we're seeing that increase in independence. We're seeing a beautiful journey where independents are creating their own communities, their own agile teams where they collaborate with each other, right? They bring each other into projects. Then what you're getting is a team that's actually worked together as well. So you're getting these squads developing. Mm-hmm. The third use case we're seeing is an alternative to permanent hiring. So right now, huge downward pressure on fixed cost. Most organizations are struggling for headcount approvals. They still need to execute and get things done. They still need capability. Independents allow you to bring someone in on an initial contract, get moving and delivering from day one. You can test each other out for a period of time. And then if you choose to move to a permanent engagement, and that's great for both sides, and that's fantastic, you just de-risk the whole partnership for both sides. And what we're seeing also there linked to that is that there's absolutely a segment within the independent population who are what I'd call they'll never, ever want to be an employee ever, right? They just want to be independents and they're passionate about being independent. But I'm seeing more and more that these aren't binary markets, Permanent employees and independents historically were never should they meet. They are completely different animals. Now what we're seeing is more and more people are focusing on the quality of the work over the contract. It's like, where is there interesting work? Where is there an interesting organization? Whether it's a perm or whether it's a contract role, I don't mind. So we're seeing this movement of people from independent to permanent, back into independent and back and forth, which is a really interesting evolution. And then the last area we're seeing organizations use independence, which is super interesting, is what is around actual capability building. So let's say I have a marketing team. Historically, I'd build that marketing team to a number and size to meet the highest utilization level for that capability within my organization, right? Mm-hmm. But like all capabilities, the needs go up and down. Yeah. So what we're seeing now is organizations saying, let me have a very agile small core of people that I need to run my business, and let me ramp up and ramp down that capability using agile talent that sits within the independent workforce. So that's a completely different way of actually building a workforce and building capabilities. So we're seeing more and more organizations becoming more strategic in how they think about their workforce as a whole, as opposed to just seeing independence as a one-off asset to bring in, right, on a one-to-one basis. So that's sort of what we're seeing. And on the independent side, at Outsized, what we're really focused on is how can we make the career of an independent aspirational, achievable, and rewarding? It's hard to be an independent. and there's many challenges. Yeah, finding work is one of them, but there are many others. You're running your own business. You're an entrepreneur. You're a salesperson. You're a project manager. You're everything. And so Outsized, we're just committed to building the infrastructure to help people, succeed as independents.
Great, thanks, Anurag. So as we wrap up, I'd love to hear one more piece of advice from each of you for businesses who are considering and hiring independent consultants. And maybe Jenny, let's start with you. What would you recommend?
It doesn't cost anything to have a conversation with an independent consultant. So don't be afraid to just start a conversation. I think a lot of people might think that you need a really well-defined scope. Here's what I'm looking for. But the fact of the matter is you really don't need that. Just pick up the phone, dial a meeting, and have a conversation with one of us. Share your business challenge. Maybe it'll help you hone in on what it is that you're looking for. Maybe you'll end up hiring an independent consultant. I hope you do. But if not, at least it might help formulate what it is that you're looking for, and allow us the opportunity to help help you understand what might come next. And I think there's really nothing to lose. It doesn't cost anything, and hopefully you'll gain something out of the conversation.
Makes sense. Niki, what's your advice?
I think really just sort of looking around, we're really talking from a global perspective here as well. I mean, Sandra, you and I, we're sat here in Europe. We have Chintan and Anurag over in Asia Pac. We have Jenny in the Americas, and we're all kind of hearing and seeing and saying the same thing. So I guess really the advice that we're going to give would be globally receptive as well. And mine would actually be to just bring us into that process earlier on. We genuinely can bring a fresh perspective and help you uncover those opportunities that potentially you haven't even considered before, and then bring those innovative solutions with simple, practical, and easy to implement plans. And another really important thing that businesses don't often think about is we can actually give you extra space to think about what it is you've seen, you've done, what you want to do next, and to really dig deep for those value-added opportunities.
Cool. Yeah, that's right, Niki. In fact, what I'd like to say, it kind of complements what you just said. So what you said, bring us early on. We'll help you ask the right questions with the problem definition itself, and then kind of go from there. But what I say is look for a consultant who stays right through, which is, is willing to stay engaged right through the implementation. So which is, it's great to make a plan and say, here's the strategy, here's how we'll go about implementing it or executing it. Then, or we always know there is something that happens, something that goes wrong, which is where you need a partner who's, agile, is resilient, is to say, what, we still got to do what we got to do. So let's do it. Let's figure out a way. And we keep doing that over and over until the outcomes are achieved. So that also is kind of important to look for in a consultant who, one, brings in the right expertise, aligns with your company culture, and is kind of willing to stay engaged all through that implementation. So that's where I would say, the best results come when there's a true partnership. Anurag, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I mean, we talk to our clients a lot about this because there is a real challenge right now for big organizations, because if you think about their workforce, increasingly they've got independent contractors, right, at larger percentages. So in more developed markets in, say, UK, US, Europe, probably at any given time, 30% of the high-skilled workforce within that enterprise will be independent. Now, those percentages are slightly low in growth markets, but it's growing. So you've got independents, you've got permanent employees, then you've got different generations of talent who think very differently. So what we're finding is that organizations are really struggling in terms of their employee value proposition when they've got these very different personas sitting within their business. And I think the independent is a different persona. And so what we help our clients with is think differently about how do they attract and engage independent talent? How do they even go through the selection process? If you think about a permanent hiring process, 5-6 rounds of interviews over a 6-week period, well, a high quality independent isn't going to hang around for that. They're going to already have been on their next project by the time you finish your third round of interviewing. So You've got to be able to move quickly. You've got to think differently about how you assess them, how you select them. Then in terms of onboarding, so there's no point bringing in a high-skilled independent and then make it very difficult for them to actually join your organization when it comes to issuing laptops, setting up on systems, getting them access to print, even simple things like being able to print, being able to book meeting rooms, find the right person in the organization, give them access to information. So setting them up for success. And then really around, okay, how do we ensure that we get maximum value while they're here, right? So that comes from, okay, well, we can bring them into our business, right? We can integrate them in. They don't need to sit on the side of the desk, in a quiet room on their own. We need to bring them into the organization so they can impact the business, and then create advocates, right? So, pay people on time, treat them well while they're in your organization. And then when they leave, they're going to talk how great it was about working within your organization. And that way your organization will become a fantastic organization which all independent talent want to work with. So I think overall the summary is, hey, really think about your value proposition to independents and understand that they think differently to a permanent employee.
Well, that's some excellent advice from a bunch of experts here. So, in summary, just to quickly reflect, I heard, don't wait until everything's defined, bring them in whilst you're thinking. Niki mentioned, let's bring them in at an early stage so they have fresh eyes and, can also help drive what it is that you're actually going to be doing. I think, Chintan, very valuable point to say, with independent consultants, you need to find the best fit, but two, also, they're going to be there for the long haul if you need them, right? So if things don't work, you get them once, twice, three times, and making sure that you understand which consultant you pick that's going to do that. And finally, of course, Anurag, what you mentioned, very, very smart advice for an organization is make sure that you know what your value proposition is, make sure you know what it is that you want, and understand that, independent consultants are going to be different animals. And, the more you bring them into your organization, the more value that they can bring for you. So all great points. So I wanted to say thank you to all of you for the really interesting conversation, the valuable insights today. And maybe just for our listeners, I can just summarize a little bit high level what we heard today. I think I have 5 key takeaways that I heard. First of all, independent consultants really offer a unique advantage. Businesses today need agility, they need focus, they need tailored solutions, and this is where the independent consultant truly comes in. And with their deep expertise, hands-on execution, flexibility can really pave the way for a successful execution that many traditional firms really can't offer today. Second of all, we heard about multi-channel strategies are extremely important in today's world for unlocking growth. And many businesses we know struggle with fragmented approaches, of how they're trying to access the market. And here, independent consultants can really take that space and that time to help integrate a strategy across the functions, ensuring that alignment and the execution, and of course, making sure that you have measurable impact. Third, we heard, the demand for independent consultants is rising. Anurag mentioned, it's 200% increase in demand. Companies are really starting to realize that they can access this world-class talent pool for very specific projects, for a very specific time limit, without having to go into long commitments as traditional consulting engagements would want you to do. Fourth, real results. They come from practical hands-on execution. So unlike many of the traditional firms that provide recommendations and quickly move on, your independent consultant is going to stick around. They're going to work alongside your team. They're going to help you drive the implementation, and they're going to ensure that you have real and sustainable business impact for your business. And then finally, I think it's really the engage early. Yeah, we talked a lot about the value that, leverage their perspectives, and, bringing in the independent consultants at an early stage will unlikely or undoubtedly uncover new opportunities and provide maybe also some innovative solutions and create strategies for your organization that are going to be simple, they're going to be practical, and they're really going to be easy to embed into your organization. So having said that, now, of course, the key question, how can our listeners connect with you and understand what you bring to the table and how you can add value to their business?
Yeah, so thanks, Sandra. We actually offer a free 45-minute discovery call where you can contact us and we can discuss and understand the needs of your business and how we can work together to really bring that added value to your business. So what we will do on the end frame of the podcast, we will have all our contact details, and we will also post on LinkedIn again with all our contact details of how you can get in touch with us.
Super. Thank you, Niki. So as a final thought, I think independent consulting isn't just a trend. Yeah, it's a powerful way for businesses to achieve focused and results-driven growth. To our listeners, first of all, thank you for joining us today. And whether you're a business leader, entertaining or considering to engage independent consultants, or if you're a professional thinking of really making the leap into independent consulting, I hope this conversation was of value to you. And please remember, in today's complex business landscape, it's about finding the right expertise that will fit your needs and that will drive your growth. So until next time, keep innovating and drive change.